All right, you guys, ready for this? Snow in the Saudi Arabian desert. You heard that right?
Oh, yeah, wild
No
stuff.
kidding. It's like sand dunes covered in white, like the Sahara turned into a winter wonderland, just like that. We've got news articles, social media posts, even videos. Crazy, right?
Yeah, it is remarkable. Saudi Arabia, you think scorching desert, especially the Al Jaff region, right?
Right, exactly. So to see this kind of weather there, well, it's definitely gotten everyone's attention.
For sure.
So for this deep dive, we got to figure this out. How did this happen? How did we go from sweltering heat to, like, snowdrifts?
Yeah, the contrast is pretty amazing. I mean, we're used to seeing those classic pictures, right? Endless golden sands as far as you can see.
Yeah.
But now these pictures and videos popping up online, totally different story.
Yeah, it's like almost like a dream or something, or like a movie with some crazy special effects.
Yeah, totally.
I saw this one photo. It was from the Hal Rafa Road, and it's this crazy mix of sand and hail. It's almost like someone sprinkled powdered sugar on the dunes, like they were some giant, weird-shaped dessert or something.
I've seen those.
But then there's this video going around. It's a group of Bedouin shepherds, and they're huddled around a fire, and you can see on their faces it's like awe and I think a little bit of concern, too.
Yeah, that's interesting. It really shows how this affects the people who actually live there, the human side of things.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, the Bedouin people, they've adapted to this harsh desert environment over, well, centuries, right? So a weather shift like this, it could really disrupt their way of life.
Oh, wow, yeah. I hadn't thought about that. It's easy to get caught up in the wow factor of the images and forget about, what it means for the people who actually live there.
Right.
But, okay, let's get back to the science for a second. How did this even happen? I mean, we need some meteorological explanations here.
Of course, of course. Well, the UAE's National Center of Meteorology, the NCM, they say it was a low-pressure system that formed over the Arabian Sea.
Okay, so low pressure over the sea. How does that turn into snow in the desert?
Well, this system, it brought in a ton of moisture-laden air, and that collided with the intense desert heat.
Yeah.
That clash, it created the perfect conditions for thunderstorms, hail, and then boom, the snow.
So it's like a massive weather showdown, hot versus cold, and in this case, cold won.
Yeah, kind of. It's a reminder that our weather systems are powerful and, well, all connected. And even the most unlikely events can happen when the conditions are right.
It makes you wonder if this could be, linked to climate change.
That's the big question, right?
Yeah.
Now, this one, Snowfall, it doesn't automatically mean it's climate change, but it does kind of fit with some of the projections for the region.
What kind of projections? What are scientists saying about climate change in the Middle East?
Well, there's growing concern about, more extreme weather events, things like crazy temperatures, droughts, and, even more rain in some areas. So this snowfall, it could be a sign that weather patterns are becoming more variable.
So it's not just some random isolated thing. It could be part of a much bigger, picture, like a puzzle we're still trying to figure out as we learn more about how climate change is impacting different parts of the world.
Exactly. And what's really interesting is that this specific event, it might actually challenge some of the existing climate models for the region.
How so? How could this snowfall mess with those models?
Some models predicted that this region would become more dry,
Yeah.
But this event suggests that maybe precipitation patterns are more complex and unpredictable than we thought. It means we need more research and better models to really understand what's going on.
So this snowstorm, it's like valuable data. It could help scientists figure out how climate change might impact this region in the future.
Exactly. And it shows that even these seemingly isolated events, they can have a big impact on our understanding of the bigger picture.
It's almost like nature is sending us a message, like, hey, pay attention, things are changing, and you need to keep up.
That's a good way to put it. And that message is not just for scientists, it's for everyone.
Okay, so we've established that this snowstorm is pretty wild and possibly really important for a lot of reasons. But before we get too deep into the climate change stuff, let's focus on what happened right after the snow fell. What were the consequences on the ground?
Right. So after the snowfall, the Saudi Weather Department issued warnings. More thunderstorms, hail, strong winds, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
They even warned about low visibility and possible travel disruptions. They told people to be careful.
So it's like the desert went from scorching hot to a full-on winter weather advisory, just like that.
Pretty much. And this brings up some interesting questions about, well, how prepares the region for these kinds of unexpected weather events?
That's a good point. We're not talking about a place that's used to snow and ice. Roads, buildings, even basic utilities. They're probably not designed for this kind of weather.
Exactly. And that's something we'll explore in more detail in the next part of our deep dive.
Sounds good. We'll get into the potential impact on infrastructure, daily life, and even the fragile desert ecosystem in part 2. But for now, I want you to think about this. If you were a Bedouin shepherd, used to navigating the desert, how would you react to waking up to snow all over your familiar landscape? What challenges and opportunities might this event present?
That's a fascinating question, and I'm sure we'll have some insightful answers when we come back. Welcome back. Let's dig a little deeper into how this snowstorm impacted things, especially for the Bedouin communities.
Yeah.
They've called this desert home for, well, generations.
Right, exactly. We were just talking about how a Bedouin shepherd might react to waking up to, like, snow-covered dunes. It's a pretty crazy thought, their whole world flipped upside down.
Yeah, absolutely. For the Bedouin, they rely on their knowledge of the desert, like for survival, right?
Yeah.
So this sudden change, it throws a wrench in things. Navigation gets harder. Water sources might freeze up or get contaminated. And grazing pastures could be buried under the snow.
Because, like, all the rules they've lived by for, like, centuries suddenly don't apply anymore.
Right.
But speaking of challenges, what about the impact on infrastructure in the whole region? We talked about this a little before, but I'm curious to hear more.
Yeah, good point. The infrastructure, especially in those more rural areas, it's just not built for heavy snow or ice.
Right.
Roads could become impassable, supply chains get disrupted, and it could be hard to access essential services.
And don't forget about the potential damage to buildings and utilities. I can't imagine the plumbing systems are ready for freezing temperatures.
Yeah, you're right. Burst pipes, water damage, it's a big risk. And that could mean even more disruptions and costs for people living there.
So this snowstorm, it's revealed a weakness in the region's preparedness for these unexpected events.
Yeah, it definitely raises some questions about resilience and adaptation. As we see more of these strange weather patterns because of climate change, investing in climate-resilient infrastructure becomes even more important.
So it's not just about dealing with this one snowstorm. It's about getting ready for future events that might be totally different from what they're used to.
Exactly.
Mm.
But, while we're talking about the downsides, there could actually be some positive effects from all this moisture, too.
Oh, really? I was so focused on the problems, I hadn't thought about that. What do you mean?
Well, think about those pictures we've seen, waterfalls coming down those desert cliffs. That extra water could be good for the plants and animals, at least for a while.
Okay, yeah.
Some desert plants, they actually thrive in these kind of boom and bust cycles of rain.
Hmm?
And some animals might benefit from the extra water, too.
So it's like the desert got a sudden burst of life, a drink of water it desperately needed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Nature's pretty resilient, And sometimes these disruptive events can actually be beneficial for some ecosystems.
Yeah, it reminds us that the impact of this snowstorm isn't the same for everyone, right? It's helping some and hurting others in this delicate desert ecosystem.
Very true. It shows how complex the relationship is between weather and nature, and how even these seemingly simple events can have all these ripple effects.
Speaking of ripple effects, we can't forget about the social media frenzy that happened because of this. It seemed like the whole world was talking about snow in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, it's true. The internet loves these kind of weird weather events, and this one was, well, pretty spectacular visually.
Yeah, it definitely captured people's imaginations. But beyond the spectacle, what do you think all this social media attention says about, like, our relationship with nature?
That's an interesting question. I think it shows our fascination with the unexpected, especially when it challenges how we think about a place. Snow in the desert, it seems impossible, right? And that's what draws us in.
Yeah, it's like a glitch in the matrix or something. Like reality is breaking its own rules.
Yeah, exactly. And social media, it's like a megaphone for these moments. We can share our amazement with the whole world.
And it creates a space to talk and think about these events, trying to make sense of it all.
Absolutely. We've seen this with other unusual weather events, too. Social media becomes this platform to share information, talk about climate change, and even push for action.
So it's not just about pretty pictures and viral videos. It's about using these moments to start conversations and raise awareness about how everything's connected and the challenges we face.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
So we've covered a lot here, from the Bedouin to infrastructure, the potential benefits for the ecosystem, and even the role of social media. But there's one big thing we still need to talk about: climate change.
Yeah, that's the big one, isn't it? This snowstorm might be a fascinating anomaly, but it could also be a sign of things to come.
And that's where we'll pick up in part 3. We'll explore what this event might tell us about the future of our planet and how we can get ready for a world where these kinds of unexpected events become, well, normal.
Welcome back, everyone, for the last part of our deep dive into this crazy snowstorm in Saudi Arabia. It's been a wild ride, for sure.
Yeah, as we've covered a lot, the science behind it, the impacts, what it means for the people living there, and even how social media blew up over it.
Right. And now it's time to tackle the big question. What does this snowstorm tell us about the future of our planet? With climate change and everything.
Yeah, that's the key thing here. This snowstorm, it might seem like a one-off, a weird thing that happened, but we got to look at it in the context of a changing climate.
So let's zoom out a bit. How does this snowfall fit into the bigger picture of climate change, especially in a place like the Middle East?
Well, it kind of confirms what scientists have been saying for years. Climate change isn't just about things getting hotter.
It's about weather patterns becoming more unpredictable, more extreme events, and they're happening in places we wouldn't expect.
So it's not just like hotter summers and melting glaciers. It's like anything could happen. Snowstorms in the desert, droughts in rainforests, floods in dry places.
Exactly. And as we talked about, these events can have a domino effect, especially in areas that are already struggling with climate issues.
Right. We talked about how it could affect water resources, in a region that's already facing water shortages, and the strain on infrastructure that wasn't built for these conditions and the disruption to farming and people's livelihoods. It's kind of a scary thought.
It is. But we can't just give up, right? This snowstorm, as crazy as it is, it can also be a chance to make things better. It's like a wake-up call to finally take climate change seriously and start doing something about it.
So instead of freaking out, we should look at it as an opportunity to shift gears from reacting to these events to actually preventing them.
Exactly. We have the knowledge, the tools, and the technology to face this challenge. We got to invest in renewable energy, find more sustainable ways of living, and build communities that can handle these kinds of changes.
And that takes everyone working together, right? Not just governments and big organizations, but everyday people too.
Absolutely. Every little thing we do, from the food we eat to how we get around, it all affects the environment. We all have a part to play in making a better future.
It's a good reminder that even small actions can make a difference.
Yeah, they really can. And let's not forget about education and awareness. The more we know about climate change, the better decisions we can make, and the more we can push for real change.
Speaking of education, before we finish up, I want to leave our listeners with some things to think about.
Okay, shoot.
If something as unbelievable as snow in the Saudi desert can happen, what other crazy things might we see as climate change keeps messing with our world?
That's a good one. It makes you think, right? What other possibilities are out there, both good and bad, as the climate keeps changing?
And building on that, what can we do, both on our own and together to get ready for these changes and build a future that's more resilient and sustainable for ourselves and for future generations?
Those are the big questions, aren't they? I really hope our listeners take these questions to heart.
Yeah.
Talk about them, learn more, and most importantly, do something. The future's uncertain, but the choices we make today, they're going to shape the world tomorrow.
Well said. And on that note, we wrap up our deep dive into this incredible event. Thanks for joining us, everyone. And remember, knowledge is power, especially when it comes to understanding and tackling the challenges of our changing world. Stay curious, stay informed, and stay involved.